Cal, welcome along.
Thank you, Gerard. G'day, Jono.
G'day, Cal. Good to see you.
You follow the World Cup, and what do you make of all of that?
A little bit. It's in the neighbourhood, so it's been interesting to watch some of the dynamic of the crowd coming through. It's been a little bit disappointing from an Australia perspective, but now we've got the Soccer World Cup coming up, so on to the next one.
We move on to our World Cups pretty quickly. We've got a final going on at Punt Road. Cal, I'll be interested in your thoughts here. Do you know, on the back of a little bit of feedback the AFL got yesterday about not giving out any explanation as to why it is so, we received today an email which gives out the reasons, but it doesn't really give out the reasons. What it does say is this is from an AFL spokesperson, an unnamed AFL spokesperson, that says Richmond earned the right to host the semi-final and indicated a very strong preference to play on their home deck at Punt Road, which we know will have great atmosphere come 1:40 Saturday. When scheduling finals matches, the AFL takes into consideration a number of factors, including a home team venue preference. We can always tick that off. Day breaks for clubs, both the week before and the following week. Timing for fans and clubs and broadcast and the forecasted crowd. And the venue capacity. So right now we've been told things that we do know, and yet they still made the decision, because what I guess we're talking about yesterday was that all of these things are on the table. All of these things are known knowns. But we also know the history of the game, and that is that despite Geelong asking for a home final many, many times along the road, it's always come down to, no, we're going to err on the side of more people. And that's why it's a confusing decision, and that's why that missive is a waste of time.
It does feel like the club's preference in this case has a stronger pull than it would in the men's finals in the past, doesn't it?
Clearly.
Yeah.
But the question is why?
But does it open it up for the men's now? So St Kilda play finals next year, just as a throw-up, right?
Yeah.
And they play the Sydney Swans in a home final. Will they play it at Marvel or will they play it at the MCG?
I think they'll play at the MCG.
There you go. And if the Saints want to play it at Marvel, too bad.
I think they'll play it at the MCG.
There you go.
Yeah.
So the consistency is all that the competition asks for in a lot of aspects of things, and this is just one aspect of that. I think where it was an opportunity just to be consistent across the line. No issue. Then we're all moving on. I can understand Richmond wanting to play at the Punt Road. Of course, we can.
It's their job.
It's their right. But in terms of what we've all, I suppose, learnt over the last probably 10 years or so, is that the crowd number will always override the home venue.
Is it a slightly different case, given the competition's different in the finals in and of itself, that the AFLW grand final is, played in terms of a home ground advantage too? We don't see that in the AFL.
Yeah, that's right. But it's still played at, and it might be different this year. We'll wait and see what happens with the.
You reckon it's going to be at the Punt Road Oval if the Tigers get through?
Yeah, exactly.
Probably not.
Probably not. So that probably answers it. Right there.
Now, if you've got a question for Cal, he knows more about your club than most. You can give us a call on the Harcourts open line. It's now open 1300 736 736, or send us a text on the temper text 0433 98 116 0433 98 1116. That would be. I'll get there. The one thing I have noticed, Jono and Cal, is the overuse of the word brutal in everything. Every time I pick up a headline on the Fox website or the AFL website, brutal seems to have permeated.
No, it's gone beyond that. It's the Fox Sports. It's every sport website now is brutal. The word.
Every decision.
Savage.
No, brutal. Okay. Brutal has dominated. It is funny how in our industry, one word seems to be picked up by everybody. It gets a run for a couple of years. Everybody uses it trying to make themselves out to be cool, like clunk. You never used to mark a ball. You clunked a ball. And if you didn't say clunk, you were seen to be actually an old fogey.
Every time now, I got 5 messages today from Gerard Healy. And he's learned how to circle on the text, which I thought was impressive in itself. But five messages, all different articles, and the title was the word brutal.
Well, it's a brutal industry, isn't it? But it is. We talk about coach sackings, we talk about CEO sackings and changes there, list changes. And it is the season of change. And that's where probably we see a little bit more of brutal come into this. And it's a brutal industry. We see the players sacked and moved on.
There's another word, Cal, which has been picked up the last couple of years as well, and It's robust. We all have robust discussions.
You can't have a discussion if it's not robust.
Chat. No, you can't have a discussion. It's got to be robust.
Peter's joined us from East Bentley. Welcome to you, Pete. You got a question for Cal?
Yes, Cal, or as Kane Corns called you, Cow. I just want to know if Geelong have anyone sort of local in their sights, because that seems to be a formula that's worked really well for us. And are there any, say, that could go around about number 7?
Yeah, there is. There's an absolute star on the rise that could be right in that ballpark for the Cats at pick 7. His name's Jai Clark. He's played in the Geelong Falcons system. He's got a really small draft range. I think Hawthorn at pick 6 and Geelong at pick 7 are about as far as his sort of options are at the moment. He's a gun. He's been mentored by Joel Selwood. He's actually a Collingwood supporter, so he's grown up locally but not been a Cats fan, so a little bit different in that respect. But tried and true has worked for the Cats to pick up these local products, and if they don't get him first dib, usually they get him down the track. But look, he's right in that mix for the Cats at that pick. And that was part of the appeal. Look, they were interested in Jack Bowes before pick 7 was thrown into the mix. Pick 7 came along and was like, oh, well, Jai Clark might be there as well.
Well, the other advantage they play, and it normally plays out quite well, is a couple of VFL players get the opportunity to train on and be a part of pre-seasons, and they build them up over a couple of year period as well.
And they've got a father-son that they've committed to as a rookie. If he gets through the rookie draft, that's Oscar Riccardi, who's obviously the son of Peter Riccardi.
He is.
Peter Riccardi, the great left footer. Oscar's a right footer. A little bit more development to go in his game, but they'll get first access to him should he get through to the rookie draft. And we know, geez, they've been beneficiaries of the father-son rule over time. What? Even leading up to the most recent grand final, we saw Hawkins and Buse and Atkins and these guys, and Gary Ablett Jr., of course, dating way back, and Matthew Scarlett.
There was a era, and you guys were all working in the industry at the time, when we were comparing St Kilda, who were coached by Grant Thomas at the time, and Geelong, coached by Bomber Thompson, I think, at the time, which squad was going to come through the most. The best, I should say. And yet the comparison was, and the stark difference between the two was, I don't think St Kilda had ever had a father-son in its history. Correct me if I'm wrong, Saints supporters. And yet Geelong had all these father-sons that were underpinning their list.
They had so few St Kilda. I just double-checked. I remember Bailey Rice in 2015 had the call to make.
So they hadn't won at that stage?
No, at that point, yeah. And he had the call to make between St Kilda and Carlton, chose the Saints. But they're luck on that front. And it is luck, isn't it? Yeah.
Am I correct in saying that the Geelong father-sons changed the father-son process because of how late in the draft they were able to pick them up?
I think Tom Hawkins was a part of that, wasn't he? Because when he came through, he was judged potentially the number 1 player in that year's draft. Yep. They got him at 40-odd.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And there's been so many changes to the father-son system, but the most recent change was, I think, when the AFL saw Joe Danaher go up pick 10 or 12 or something 10 years ago, and thought this new bidding system has to be brought in because at the moment, clubs are getting really, really lucky.
Now, just off the text, we asked for the AFL to give us some sort of explanation, not just a series of bullet points. Well, I'm not sure who it is, but they've texted through and said the forecast crowd was around 4,000, so about 1,500 people are going to be affected, likely to miss out, which is very different to circa 30,000 that may miss out if you play it down at Geelong. Well, even if that's 15,000, we'll take the point. 15,000 extra people doesn't justify the cost of opening up a larger venue. Common sense, really. Well, if the AFL said that, I think most people would say, okay, we now understand the machinations behind it. And whether or not you agree with it or not, and I'm not quite sure whether I do, because on the day, 5,000 people might turn up and the forecast of 4,000 might be out by 2 or 3. It might rain. Who knows what's going to happen. But at least if that was sent out to everybody out in the footy world, you avoid the drama. And I'm not sure why that shouldn't be the case, just a little bit more transparency.
There's been discussion on footy topics in AFLW, which I've loved this week. There's the crowd size, and this is a discussion that we have in the men's competition for so long as well. The All-Australian debate, you've been at the forefront of that for many years, Gerard. We saw that take a hold of the AFLW community earlier this week too. So I love that it's generating that type of passion as well for the supporter bases out there, and clearly we're seeing that come to fruition now with an 18-team competition.
But it's even in commentary as well. It's now based on the performance of the players. And that's what they wanted that at the start of this year. The players wanted to be judged, not just because they're doing such a good job and they're contested and all those things. They wanted a broader opinion about the way they were actually playing the game as well. And I think that started to open up in commentary a lot more.
Essentially, they're saying it's okay to criticise.
Absolutely.
It's okay to give feedback.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think that's the level now which has seen that next level of growth in the competition.
Down to Craigieburn. Nathan, thanks for your call. You with us, Nathan? It's been holding on a while. We will move on. We'll come back to Nathan if he's there. But on line 3, Michael's from Mill Park. You want to talk Tigers, Michael?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I'm shifting the conversation. It's a good one about the AFLW. But I'm just after a question from Carl just around the Tigers and any whispers with the upcoming draft. Obviously, they're coming in fairly late. Sort of what they've got up their sleeve with the draft hand that they've sacrificed for Taranto and Hopper.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd love to know who they were looking at pick 53 and 63. It's hard enough at the moment to work out pick 13 and 14. But I do think that if there's a couple of tools available late, that it might be worth a nibble, because in the succession plan that they've obviously built through the trade period, we've seen Hopper and Taranto come in. I think they're pretty happy with some of the other midfielders that they've got through there. But Josh Gibcus was a tall defender they added last year.
Yep.
Really exciting. I think they could find a key forward potentially late. So they have a look at a guy like Tom Scully, who's dominated Sanford under-18 footy, and he could be a later / rookie option there. Is Harry Lemmy, another South Australian tall, who's probably slipped back a little bit down the pecking order? Could he be a chance later on? Some of those kind of guys could be in the mix, I think. But I think the Tigers recruiting team will rock up night one and watch proceedings unfold. And they really don't have any chips to even push up the order because of how much they've traded out over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and they lost a very talented tall to the Gold Coast, which hasn't helped them at all. He had a fantastic season.
Yeah, Marby Ochol was great last year, and also Cal Coleman-Jones, who had been part of their sort of succession plan there potentially as well, went to North Melbourne. We only saw bits and pieces of him this year, but I'm sure that under a new coach there, he'd be amping for a bigger opportunity next year.
How are we going to look at that recruit in 5 years' time?
Which one?
Coleman-Jones.
Yeah, I think it's up to him. I think he's got some ability to go and be a good player. I think he needs to find out if he's a ruckman who can play a bit of forward, or a forward who can be a bit of a ruck, and what North Melbourne sees is the best option for him. He came through the system as a sort of mid-range draftee, but working next to Jack Rewalt for that time was good. He was a wanted man last year as well. They basically gave up a second-round pick to get him, so they valued him, and I think we just need to see that value on the field now.
I reckon at some stage in the next year or so, we're going to see, if he makes it, we're going to see an article about fitness. I mean, I like everybody in footy, you and I and everyone else, you never know how unfit you are until you get really fit. And you think you're fit, and I look at him and I think to myself, geez, there's some talent there, but you've got to get to 3 times as many contests to make the impact. And I think he's got great talent, and I still have great hope that the Kangaroos have got themselves a hell of a player. But as you said, it's up to him.
And he kicked 4 goals, maybe one of those games against the Giants when he was coming back into that Richmond side in 2021. So he's got some ability there, and 198 can mark it above his head.
I think the key to all players is don't see yourself as a tall. See yourself as a midfielder. Everybody has to be a midfielder. Just run and get yourself fit. If you can run with the mids, then you're going to make it.
And I think a lot to do with what players do now. We see now, and I hope he's doing work off in the background and not posting it on socials deliberately, so that he has that impact when he walks in to day one of pre-season. And I love the fact that, players that do stuff when no one's watching. I love that aspect of football. But for someone like Coleman-Jones, do you see players that are either in the US doing something different, or they're at personal trainers that have got a different feel and touch to their preparations in the off-season, which become a critical part now. Yes, we talk about off-season and taking a break, which is important, but also that build-up to day one of pre-season is critical for every player, not just the very best, but also that player who needs to come in and show the coaches and his teammates that, well, hang on a sec here, this could be a little spark and inspiration we need because of the way he's turned up.
And we're seeing that across the competition, I think. In recent weeks, we've seen more and more players back at their clubs. They've had their longer spell for the first time in 3 years. They've been overseas. Most of them have been back for a reasonable amount of weeks now. Training for the large part for clubs who finished outside the top 8 will be back on November 21, a fair portion of that group, and then 28th as well beyond that. But I dare say we'll see 80% of teams be back on in terms of the players on their list, even if they don't have to be, just because they're ready for that next test. And pre-season's pretty short now, especially with the season potentially being brought forward a week because of that extra round added in.
Interesting last night, John Longmire wasn't interested in having just one round. He wants 2 rounds.
Wants 2?
He wants 2 pre-season games, yeah.
That makes pre-season shorter then, because they will structure a couple of games prior to the official practice game. So they probably will play 3, but it's those 2 playing them probably a week or 2 earlier than
but the trade-off, Jono, was 1 less practice game for 1 extra real game. But ultimately, the clubs are going to do what they want to do, and that is get 2 or 3 practice games in anyway.
And you can arrange them amongst yourselves, and that's been a good thing.
That's right.
We've seen come about the unofficial scratch match that can be 6 quarters or 3/3 or whatever it is.
Paul Pascoe, I think his name is, touted as a top 20, looks to have slid a bit. We've got a text wanting to know his future.
Yeah, member of the Calder Cannons program, played a little bit of Vic Metro footy. I think he's more of a backhand rookie option at this point, as we sort of mentioned.
That's a slide.
Yeah, he probably didn't have the best season that he came into this year. And there was some unexpectedness in terms of what we saw flashes off last year versus what we've seen in the full picture of this year.
And that comes down to the development debate that we're having in football, at soccer at the moment, and now in Aussie rules with the draft. And you can see something as a 16-year-old that you might not have had the best year this year, but is it enough a year ago where you go, I've seen something that I know within 2 years' time, a Richmond at pick 53 go, you know what, we'll take this kid, we'll put him with a couple of guys, Taranto and Hopper, whoever it is, and then 2 years' time, we know where he'll get to.
Mid-season draft too. And we've seen that a lot as well over the last couple of years where players have been overlooked. And that's where the clubs are weighing up, particularly with Talls. And Paul Pascoe's more of a midfield wing, half back sort of option. But the Talls debate for clubs now is, do we pick off one of these guys that we know is probably getting into a system 6 months too soon? But if we let him go, he's going to be in the mid-season draft. There's a couple of ruckmen that I can tell. There's a guy called Max Noble who's Trent Noble's son. And if he's not taken in the national draft, he will be picked up in the mid-season draft next year.
There is a view amongst a number of recruiters that you don't take players with your early picks that are ruckman.
No, and that's why there's a guy called Harry Barnett who's probably the best ruckman in this year. He's the best ruckman in this pool. He might not go until later in the 20s or later in the first round. And we've seen that Tim English was pick 19, Brodie Grundy was pick 18. But these guys who are a bit raw, and Noble is that, 207 centimetres. If he doesn't get picked off, he'll get taken mid-year next year. So are you the club to just wear it for the moment and house him for the next few years?
What are your thoughts on the deals from a mid-season draft?
Before you go, Jono, there are the odd exceptions. I think Nat Nui went pick 1 or 2 or 3.
He went 2, and Luke Jackson was obviously.
And Luke Jackson.
And that's what the Luke Jackson pick was, a sensational pick. I mean, he helped deliver the Melbourne a premiership, and 3 years later, he's got them 2 first rounders.
So the real challenge is who are going to be the exceptions, because they are out there.
Yeah, but athletically, those guys are an exception, and that's why they stand out in the position they are. The mid-season draft and the length of contract, do you think that is something that will change? I know there's only been a couple of players sort of speak out on this that are no longer a part of the system, but in some ways I understand. In other ways I go, well, you've got a short period and you've got to make the most of it.
And you also have the option to put down 18 months. So if you back yourself to be good enough and you've got the club interest there, when it comes to nomination time at the mid-season draft, you can say 6 months or 18 months or don't care.
There you go.
So if it's in with you, you think you're good enough to say, all right, a club likes me enough, I'm going to get picked and I'm going to do the job straight away. Put 18 months there. If you're just willing to take any opportunity, you can be maybe a little bit more, less of a lock. Then you might just say 6 months. And clubs weigh that up, but really clubs are taking these guys not thinking they're going to be there for 6 months. They want them to be there for at least a year and a half, because 6 months is essentially can be 10 weeks, really, in terms of footy terms, 10 matches. So you can put down 18 months. And I think we'll see more player agents and players coming through say, no, I'm in for 18 months because I don't want to be going and changing states and changing all my life around for 6 months and then getting booted out the system.
Callum Twomey from AFL Media is with us in the studio on this Wednesday evening. He's going to be with us right through until 7 o'clock taking your calls. on any matter of football. He knows more about the game and those playing it and those about to play it than anyone else in the industry right now. Collier Dawkins. What's your thoughts on Collier Dawkins, Jono, before we get the view on from Callum Twomey? In fact, I'll go to you first, Kel, seeing as Jono was giving me nothing.
First round pick from the Super Draft 2018 just hasn't been able to get going, and I think it was the landing of Taranto and Hopper through that midfield that squeezed him out. I think there's something there to work with.
Sure.
I think clubs will have a look at it, and for me, I reckon he's more likely to be a pre-season train-on prospect, and we'll see a bit of that. So he's come and get an opportunity with clubs in December over January. Prove your worth through that time, and we might use the rookie spot on you.
He's had some good moves.
He has.
Looks to me like he should be playing on a list, Jono. He looks to me as if there's a dead set career ahead of him. We don't know the inside. We don't know, why he hasn't quite nailed it just yet. But if you're a first rounder and you've got the athleticism that he has, surely someone take a punt on him.
It's interesting. He was at the end of that first round. So was Liam Stocker, and both of them out of the system after 4 years. And both of them have played some AFL footy and shown a bit here and there. And both of them were pretty standard picks around that time of the draft. It wasn't if they were big spec picks. They were rated around there. So some come on a little bit quicker than others. I think Riley Clear-Dawkins was always a bit raw as well. He came in at 193 centimetre midfielder, working out how to use his arms and legs. Maybe that takes a little bit longer, and can he nail that spot?
But that's the example for me where if I'm a young player in the competition and I've survived the list this year, you know your time is coming unless you do something specifically different. Now, what is that difference? What are you going to do as an individual player to start to set yourself apart from, you might be rated 33. How are you going to become 23? And you're not looking to become the in the top 10 player. You want to get there, but it's a gradual jump as a player in this competition on a list. It's tough. It's extremely tough. And you've got to work out within your own drive as a player how you make those progressions on the list and start to jump forward. Now, I'm not sure how seriously that is taken at times, and you just roll and you're waiting for someone to dictate your future rather than you dictating it yourself and having that significant impact.
Can it be done in season, or do you think that's all a pre-season, that 3 month?
No question. No, it can be done. It's over a year, but it starts the moment you walk in because your impression then is seen differently from this guy just made it. We're not seeing much different from him this pre-season. Starts in the VFL.
What's the jump?
Rather than starting pre-season, getting a jump on your teammates for the first 6 weeks, and then you might play the first practice game, and who knows?
Yep.
That's the sort of mentality that starts it, and then it's a build from there. You might play 2 practice games, get dropped back to the 2s, but you've had a taste, then you've got something to build on, and we all know how the conversations go from that point in clubland. But it really does, in that first 4 to 6 weeks of a summer, determines whether you're on a list potentially at the following year or you're not.
Billy Dowling, why is he rated so low? He's the best midfielder in South Australia.
He's not the best one in it. Mateus Philippou is the best one in it. He could be a superstar. He's 192 centimetre half forward midfielder. Billy Dowling does get a lot of the footy though. It's probably just about the contested inside midfielders where they fit in. I think he's a second half of the draft option, but has had a really consistent season and deserves to be looked at by clubs.
Max Krasetsky, can he end up at North Melbourne with pick 23?
He'll be around there. I think there's a few clubs looking at him around there. Tall defender, tall forward, so certainly some ability at both ends of the ground.